Good afternoon, or good morning. I would like to welcome those online and those in the chamber to our December 15th, 2020 Weber County Board of Commissioners. I'm Commissioner Gage Furrow. I'm joined this morning by my fellow commissioners, Jim Harvey's to my right, Scott Jenkins to my left. We're going to start off with a Pledge of Allegiance led by Christy Bingham, and an invocation given by Commissioner Jenkins, thought of the day Commissioner Harvey, then we'll go to public comments. Christy?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioner Jenkins.
Thank you. Our dear Heavenly Father, as we come before Thee this day at the beginning of this commission meeting, we give You thanks for the opportunity we have of serving, for our responsibilities, and for the opportunities we all have to serve here, the people of this fine county, to make it a better place to live, and we're grateful for that. We pray that Thy Spirit will attend us this day, that the things we say and do here will be in accordance with Thy holy mind and will, and certainly in the best interests of the citizens of this county. We pray that Thou would bless the fine people in this county as they are under this COVID issue right now, this pandemic. We pray that we can hang on a little longer as we see the vaccinations starting to be delivered and take place. We pray that Thou bless us with the patience we need to complete this task so we can beat this thing. We are grateful, Lord, for all the blessings that Thou hast bestowed upon us, for the opportunity we have of living here. And we pray that Thou be with us this day, and we do it in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
What a privilege it is to give the thought for today while we're still while we're still a bit away from Christmas. And we're still right in between Thanksgiving. There are a lot of things that I'm thankful for. One of the things in particular is my family and the experiences I've had around family. You know, for people, I think Christmas has changed a little bit for some. I remember the anticipation of Christmas as a boy, and I certainly hope that still exists for kids. I remember the anticipation, though, for adults, and that seems to have gone a little more away as I get a little older. The feeling of instant gratification with the things that we have, with everything at our disposals, seems to be more immediate. As I think back of highlights of my life, times that are the most special, I think back not to things tangible that I've received, but those intangible things, and many of them are through experiences. Stacy from our office sent me a quote from Henry Drummond today that was especially poignant. She said, the Henry Drummond quote says, "You will find as you look back at your life that the moments when you've really lived are the moments when you have done things in the spirit of love, which requires action." Most of the time, the experiences in my life have required action when I've been the most enriched of my own. They weren't the action of going out and necessarily purchasing something. They were the investment of time it took to be thoughtful, the investment of time it took to be kinder, the investment of time it took to be softer, the investment of time it took to be more thoughtful. I hope this year for all of us, as we are faced with a unique holiday holiday season, especially as it comes to being around family and with our new appendage friends here around each of our ears, that we invest in the time it takes to be thoughtful and kind, especially as we won't be necessarily as together as we maybe are used to being. I would also ask that you think about those who won't have or who spend time in loneliness. Maybe take a call, or write a card or a letter or a thought, or as Drummond said, take the time to do something in the spirit of love. And those are my thoughts today, Commissioners. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Great thoughts. Appreciate that. Let's now go to public comments. Anyone in the chamber would like to come forward and make a comment? Now is your time. Seeing none, do we have anybody online, Christy, who would like to make a comment? Okay. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and move on then to our agenda, which would be the consent items. And we're going to start with consent items F1, request for approval of warrants 3333 through 3354 and 465-179 through 455-375 in the amount of $5,240,580.90. 2, request for approval of purchase orders in the amount of $91,950.97. 3, request for approval of minutes for the meeting held on December 8, 2020. 4, request for approval of the First Amendment to the Municipal Materials Management Agreement between Weber County and Republic Services. 5, request for approval of the Third Amendment to the Landfill Operating and Management Agreement made by and between Weber County and Molding & Sons Landfill LLC. 6, request for approval of change order number 14 to Staker Parson contract, 12th Street corridor. No cost to county modifications. These were made to the water line in the field. 7, request for approval of retirement agreements by and between Weber County and the following individuals: Joseph Songer, Ryan Van Beekum, Carrie Little, Paul Garcia, John Milloway, and Brian Jacobs. That's our consent items. Commissioners, questions, comments before we go to Lynn for explanation? Commissioner Harvey. Lynn?
No
Go ahead.
questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Summary of the highlights for this week. We had 24 purchase orders totaling $92,000. The largest of these, $27,000 or 29% to the jail for gloves and protective equipment, $23,000 or 25% to the Recreation Department for a Kubota tractor, $14,000 or 15% to the transfer station for vehicle repairs and fuel and emergency staffing, and $10,000 or 11% to the Stormwater Fund. We also had 219 checks totaling $5.2 million. Largest of these, $3.2 million, or 61%, was a CARES Act distribution, with $2.5 million to Ogden City, $500,000 to IHC, $220,000 to OWATC, and $46,000 to Weber State. We also had $482,000, or 9%, to the transfer station for disposal cost, scale replacement, and equipment maintenance. $380,000, or 7%, for parking structure reconstruction, or parking structure construction, and finally, $367,000, or 7%, was a ramp award to North Ogden.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments, Commissioners? If not, I'd entertain a motion on consent items F1 through 7.
So I do have some questions,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair. So the first thing I want to know is Kubota tractor. And Commissioner Harvey, maybe you can answer this. Where are we using that at?
I can answer that, Marty. Go ahead.
Yeah, that comes up, and I just want to know.
It's for the archery complex and observatory park, all the work that we do out there to keep those grounds
Yeah.
working out there.
All right, all right. So, secondly, and Lynn, I wish they could, most of these I'm okay. You kind of get used to reading them, you can see where they're at, but some of these you don't. And when it says here, printer lithograph special projects. It's not assigned to apartment or anything like that. You don't know what that's all about, you know? And then the other one is Co-File Technologies, Recorder Special Projects. You have any explanation for those?
I'm looking over at purchasing to see if they have details on that particular departmental expense.
So you're talking about warrants.
Yeah, I'm on warrants now. I was on purchase orders with the tractor, and then I switched to warrants. I'm sorry. I didn't say that. That's right, Jason. I'm on warrants.
It takes a little bit more to look it up. It's fine. So which one is it, the lithograph one? What's the other one?
Yeah, the first one was KH printer lithograph special projects. So it doesn't give you a department or what it's for. And the other one is Co-File Technologies, recorder's office. And it just says special project, you know, for 25 grand. And you kind of want to know what this stuff's for. We go through so much money here. Literally every week that we approve bills, it's in the millions, and many times, just like today, almost $6 million.
In a week, yeah.
Yeah, and you want to make sure so much of this is passed through. And I try to keep track of the big numbers, you know, to make sure that we don't have any major errors. And so I know you two look at me once in a while like, okay, Jenkins, now what are you going to be, what are you going to be doing?
We appreciate you watching after.
Well, I try.
That's a good education, because if you have questions, you know, if I may continue, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
You know, a lot of these expenditures, though, I've got a lot of trust in our departments. For instance, Marty and Jennifer and Todd and Duncan and Ross and Cassie, the rest of them, you know, are our little portfolios, but they watch their budgets really, really tight. And they've worked well with Jason already, and they've worked with Lynn and Ricky, and we've got wonderful processes in place. In fact, I'd say we've stood up some of the most we could stand up to any audit that Mr. Dougal or any of the rest from the state would come and put on us. And so I'm really, really impressed. Over the decades, really, it's taken to develop the processes we have. But when you get to Sean and Sarah and the rest of those departments, they know what they're doing, and we have great processes. We have great people in place that exercise them. So I'm not as tight. I mean, you've brought some good things up, but I've got a lot of peace when they get to this point.
All right. So while he's looking that up, Lynn, there's one more on here that I had a question about, and that is commercial floor systems, health administration improvements. What's health administration? Is that the health department? Doesn't really say. It just says health administrations improvements.
Correct. That is the health department.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm comfortable with that then. I just kind of want to make sure. Jason, these are not way out. I can approve those. We can talk later. I should have called you earlier. I kind of forgot.
You want to get offline with Jason after the meeting?
I'll send you an email on the details.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks. All right.
This wasn't so much I wouldn't approve them, so I'm okay.
Okay, so with that, further questions? If not, I entertain a motion on consent items.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion that we approve these consent items.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Consent items F1 through 7 have been approved. Let's go to action items. G1, request for approval of a resolution appointing members to the Weber County Weed Board. Looks like I'm presenting that. The only nominee that I'd like to present, obviously we know the Weed Board has lost or will be losing our chair this coming year because of a conflict with his current employment. So we went back through the people that actually applied prior to the final Weed Board selection, and Mr. Tom Favero's name was on there. He's been contacted to see if he'd be willing to serve, and the answer to that was affirmative. So, Commissioners, I'd like to present the name of Mr. Tom Favero. He's a West Weber County farmer, and under the state statute, we are required to have at least 2 farmers, people, I should say, that deal with agricultural on a full-time basis on that weed board. This would actually give us 3. So we have 3 people that have agricultural as their prime source of income. So I'm optimistic. I anticipate some great things as we revamp this weed board and move forward, some great things happening. So that would be my nominee, Commissioners.
So, Mr. Chair, he actually lives in Plain City city limits.
That's right, yeah.
So, as a result, I really would like to nominate him because he's a fellow Plain Cityite. Mr. Harvey, is that okay if I do that?
Sounds like you're a little homered here, but yeah, I'm okay with that.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion that we approve action item G1, Resolution 43, appointing Tom Favero to the Weber County Weed Board.
Okay, the motion's been made for Mr. Tom Favero.
Without reservation, second.
And a second. Bottom.
Commissioner Jenkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey,
Aye.
and Chair Four.
Aye. Thank you for that. So we will contact him. Our first meeting is scheduled, I believe, in January. All right, let's go to action item G2, if we can. Request for approval of the first reading of an ordinance amending fees for the construction and demolition landfill. That'd be waste fees. Mr. Sean Wilkinson, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. This is actually the final reading of this amendment. We had this on last week for the first reading. And the request here in this ordinance amendment is to raise the tipping fee from $16 to $18 per ton and to create a new fee for tires with a rim diameter greater than 24.5 inches. That will, again, be $25 per ton.
Great. Questions, Commissioners?
Mr. Chair, that's in my portfolio, and we met with our contractor, who we contract with to run that for us. That's the county landfill. And those fees have never been raised since 2009, was it?
8 is when the
8.
agreement was
Okay.
installed, yes.
So it's 12 years. And so we felt like it was appropriate to raise them a little. We checked with all those around, and we're still going to be the lowest, the cheapest. And of course, we don't do it to make money. We do it to offer a service to our citizens. So this simply will put us in a position where we won't be running behind.
Great.
And so with that, I'd make a motion to approve action item G2, which is ordinance 21, which will raise the landfill fee $2 a ton and then create a new fee for tires. We're finding ourselves getting tires, large tires, because there's no place to turn those in and recycle them.
Great. Thank you. We have a motion.
Second?
And we have a second. Roll call.
Commissioner Jenkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey,
Aye.
Chair Four.
Aye. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Let's now go to action item G3, request for approval of the first reading of an ordinance amending Title 12, Building Regulations and Site Permits of the Weber County Code. Mr. Wilkinson, you're back up.
Thank you. I have Mr. Burnish with me here. He's our building official. Commissioners, we've talked to you over the last few months about increasing fees and amending some provisions in Title 12 relating to our building inspection division to update our codes so they reflect what the state has mandated. So those are the major changes to this ordinance. I've provided a brief summary here. And let me just go through a few of the things that we are doing. So the list of individual building codes has been removed and replaced with language that adopts the codes listed in Title 15A, Chapter 2, Sections 103 and 104 of the Utah Code. That way our code will always be up to date because we will follow the Utah Code. The permit fee for a building valued between $1,000 and $2,000 was increased from $47 to $69.25. The latest edition of the building valuation data published by the International Code Council by occupancy and type of construction will continue to be used with the exception of finished basements. And finished basements will be valued at 50% of the building valuation data. Electrical fees, excluding solar installations, will be increased from $47 to $150, and plumbing and mechanical fees will be increased from $47 to $100. Over-the-counter review fees will be increased from $47 to $55 per hour in cases or in excess of 30 minutes. Now, in the summary, I had accidentally put 115 there. That was a typo. It is actually 55. Re-inspection fees are increased from $47 to $115. An investigation fee of $100 per hour has been added. An after-hours inspection fee of $125 was added, and that is when a request is made and it is approved by the building official. And an administration and printing fee of $25 plus the cost of materials has been added. We had just one change that we needed to make. There was an extra word in section 12-3-8-6, and that the word investigation should have been removed because it was moved to a different section, and so we've taken care of that, and that's the only change. So, Commissioners, what you see in the clean copy minus that word is what we are proposing.
All right, does that conclude your presentation?
It does, and if you have any technical questions, Mr. Burnish can answer those.
Yeah. Thank you. Questions, commissioners? Anything you'd like to add or ask Stan why we have him here?
I would simply like to compliment you, Stan. We give you a hard time the first time you come in.
Who's we?
And, well, I did. I'm sorry. You're right. You're right.
Have somebody in your pocket?
Commissioner Harvey, I deserved that. I give you a hard time the first time you came in, and you've responded that well. I really like what you've done this time. It's easy to understand, and I think the citizenry is well served by this now. And so I thank you for being patient with us and working your way through it.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. And Stan, I just say, or Sean, maybe you can answer this. So looking at, and this is a subject that we've reviewed, as Commissioner Jenkins said, more than once.
Yes.
It appears this brings us in line with other counties, municipalities throughout the state in conformity with the code, and still puts us in what I would say a fair position as we look at construction, new building in our county, that we're not creating an undue burden on the public with our fees.
That is correct.
Would you agree with that, or?
You can add, but yes, Commissioner, I believe we're still in the middle.
Right.
We're not low, we're not high, but I believe these rates are fair. And the purpose of this is to allow us to provide the service that the state mandates. And that includes this coming year, we're going to be hiring a new plan reviewer so that we can keep up with that 14-day mandate. Yeah. So these extra fees will definitely help to fund that position and help us maintain the staff that we need to.
Right. So the level of service is actually going to increase without putting an undue burden.
Yes,
That's correct.
You're right. Thank you. Yes. Commissioner Harvey, do you have a comment?
Thank you. And I don't mean to poke fun at you publicly.
That's okay. It won't be the first time.
Yeah. I do mean to do it privately, but not publicly. So let me ask, if I can, the presenters a couple of questions. First off, do these fees have any, if a resident lives in any incorporated city, in a city within Weber County, do these fees have anything to do with them?
No.
No.
So the purpose, I'm not a fee guy. I am a fee guy, but I'm not a fee guy. So these fees come directly out of our municipal services account, correct?
Correct.
So as I understand it, in order to keep up with building, you have to have a certain level of service that's imposed upon us by the state of Utah. We're required by that ordinance, by mandate, really state mandate, to perform within a certain amount of time.
Correct.
And if we can't perform in that amount of time, then we're penalized. Your department, how many people do you have in your department? Mr. Burnish?
Currently, including myself, we have six.
Six
We
people,
have- I have,
that's okay. So 6 people, when did you go from 5 to 6?
40 days ago, perhaps.
Okay, 40
We're
days
running
ago.
Another plans.
When did you go from 4 to 5?
5 months.
And when did you go from 3 to 4?
Oh,
It's been a while.
done a while, yeah.
Years?
Years. We've had
Yes.
4 for a number of years.
So we are adding some people, some extra staff. Why do you need more staff?
Growth.
What does that mean?
So Weber County is seeing unprecedented growth. We're approaching 700 building permits going out the door this year before the end of the year, whereas in years previous, we got into the 500 numbers.
5 years ago, how many you were here 5 years ago, weren't you, Stan?
Yes,
How many building permits did we have 5 years ago
it
about?
was in the 500s, I do believe.
So we've added at least another 50% to our workload, yet we've not added the folks there. So, okay, and then plus the restrictions are a little more, they're a little tighter. We're
Correct.
having to do a little more with the same people. And so, let me ask another question. So the reason I noticed in particularly with some of the fees went from 47 to 63 and others, what does it cost to send a man out on a job just to do one inspection? I mean, we've got the labor, the time, and it's not just his hourly wage, but we pay the FICA and all those other things. And we've got the truck and the insurance and what does it cost to send a guy out on a job?
I'm sure it's well in excess of $100 an hour.
But we're moving these fees to even less than an hour. We expect a man to get out there and back within an hour. And so what you're telling me is in the past, up until today, the Municipal Services Fund, if someone chooses to build a home, the Municipal Services Fund or the rest of the people in the county have subsidized in some portion subsidized the process of building a home.
Yes, in many cases that is
Yeah.
true.
So what these fees do is this makes it so that everybody who lives in unincorporated Weber County, the people who are building a home are paying their share, and that others who live in unincorporated Weber County are not subsidizing that anymore.
That's correct.
That's
Correct.
great. Thank you.
Great. Good questions. Thanks. Anything else, Commissioners? Stan, Sean, does that conclude your presentation?
I believe it does.
Yes.
Thank you very much for being with us. I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve, I'll back that off. This is Commissioner Jenkins' portfolio.
Okay. Commissioner Jenkins, looks like it's your ball.
I appreciate your efforts, Commissioner. With that, I'd make a motion that we approve the new building permit fees as presented to us in G3.
G3, this would be the first reading.
First reading.
Okay, and do we have a second?
Second?
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, motion carries. Thank you. Stan, appreciate you being with us. Great job. Sean, thank you. Let's now go to G4, request for approval of the first reading of an ordinance granting a non-exclusive franchise to All West Utah for the purpose of installing, operating, and maintaining a communication system within the public right-of-way of Weber County. Mr. Wilkinson, you're back up.
Thank you. Commissioners, All West Communications has approached the county about having this franchise ordinance which allows them to locate utilities within our public rights-of-way. We have done this with others, including Rocky Mountain Power and other utilities, so this is a standard type of agreement that we see on a regular basis. They will still take out excavation permits for any work that they do and repair our roads to a satisfactory standard. The agreement is for an initial term of 30 years. It can reach up to 50 years on a year-to-year basis after 30. And you can look at the other provisions I've summarized, but it is a straightforward and basic franchise agreement.
So, Sean, is this for broadband or what
What
utility is this? Do you know?
It's for communication, so I believe that includes broadband, telephone,
Okay.
other communications, whatever
And,
those might
and this would be the entire county?
The unincorporated area.
Unincorporated,
Yes,
got it.
correct.
Okay. Thank you. Questions, commissioners?
Mr. Chair, if I might.
Yes, go ahead.
So, Sean, right now, we do not have a franchise tax in the county, do we?
Well-
That we participate in.
Scott, you want to speak to that?
We get them from them. We don't assess them a tax, though, right, Scott? Right.
Yeah.
The only reason I question that, we had a discussion about this morning in our commission, or our pre-meeting, and I was telling them a little bit about Plain City. That's when we started our fire department out there. That's how we financed it, was through assessing a franchise tax, and I think the max you can put on is 6%, which we did when we were out there. And anyway, I just wanted to make sure we didn't have one of those. I didn't think we did. Thanks, sir.
Since we've got Chris Crockett here, we talked about that this morning, Commissioner. Chris, can you give us, and maybe you don't have it off the tip of your tongue, but what is the state requirements if we were to impose, or can we impose franchise fees or taxes on these entities using our existing right-of-ways? Do you know the answer to that?
I don't know the answer as far as how much or what, if you can, but if you are allowed to do that, I would assume it would follow a similar process to raising other taxes, where there's going to have to be a sufficient amount of public notice, public discussion on that. But we would absolutely be happy to find out what the process is for implementing a fee or a tax on a franchise agreement.
Thanks. I think that'd be worth checking into. I know I've had conversations with Mr. John Bond, and his information was that we haven't, and for some reason we don't impose franchise fees, but that'd be worth checking into.
Sure. We will absolutely let you know what your options are. And one other comment on this, it's listed as a first reading of an ordinance. We discussed that as a staff as to whether it should be an ordinance or just an agreement. But since it's dealing with public rights of way, we're fine having it listed as an ordinance, just because it'll go through 2 readings and it'll allow the public to give sufficient comment on it.
Great. Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions, comments? Mr. Wilkinson, anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you.
With that, I'd entertain a motion.
I'd make a motion that we approve this item.
All right, we have a motion,
Second.
and I think we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to G5, request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and American Chariot Racing Association to hold the ACR regular season at the Golden Spike Event Center. Mr. Duncan Olson, welcome.
Thank you, Commissioners. So this is our contract with the new Chariot Racing Group. It's a little bit of a discount on the grandstand as well as the racetrack for sponsorship. We are continuing to charge them for stalls, which has been a little bit of an adjustment for them, but we're excited to have them back in that cold weather.
Yeah. When's it going to start, Duncan?
The first weekend in January will be their first this year. They decided to kind of push back a little bit and not start in December like normal, just because of the numbers being a little bit higher. And that population, you know, there's a lot of those people that are in that high-risk category. So
Are you going to allow members of the public in a limited basis, or?
we'll see as we get a little bit closer. Right now, it's going to be mostly just the teams, but there will be some spectators as we go through, following the social distancing and those things.
Great. Thank you. Questions, commissioners?
No. With that, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion, if you're willing to accept a motion.
Yeah, is this your portfolio? Yeah, I think I will. Go ahead.
I'll make a motion that we approve the contract by and between Weber County and the ACR for the regular season chariot racing.
Thank you. We have a motion.
Second.
And we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Bye-bye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you. First reading has been approved, or approval has been approved on that. Thank you. Next. Let's go to a request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and Connections Publishing LLC for a bi-monthly publication of the county. Commissioner Harvey.
I think we missed one.
We're going to do that. I skipped. Let's do that one. I'll go back to 6.
Okay, great.
Good. I got ahead of myself, but Commissioner Harvey, this is you.
Okay, great. This is a contract by and between Weber County for the purpose of communicating to the public, much similar to periodicals that are published by our local newspaper, the Western Heritage Magazine. We've met as a group and met as as basically another way for us to get information out. It's been reviewed by Mr. Crockett. It's been reviewed by Jason, our purchasing agent. This will just give us another avenue by which to notify people. Then the newspaper, which right now that we're spending a lot of money with the newspaper. We like the newspaper. They've done a wonderful job. This just gives us yet another opportunity to do to notify the public on the things that we're doing here within the county and help them be a little more acquainted so that to increase their access to services.
Great. So it's a communication, and I understand that there will be some advertisement sold, so
Not by us.
not by us, but it will help pay for a portion of the cost.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
And the writing is also not done by us. It supports writers and news people. So this is a good thing. It separates us.
All right, good. Questions, comments? If not, I'm ready for a motion on the county publication.
Commissioners, if I could just make a quick comment on this one as well. I'd also like to say that the county attorney's office, their new civil attorney, Brandon Quinney, also reviewed this contract, and I just want to say he did such a good job. He not only made sure that we crossed all our T's, dotted our I's, but we also dotted our lowercase j's, and so he did a fantastic job.
Good to know. Commissioner Harvey, did you make the motion on that, or?
Well, I will make, as the presenter, I would
Yeah.
love it to come from the floor, but if not, I'll make the motion that we approve this contract by and between Weber County and Connection Publishing LLC for the bi-monthly, which is actually every other month.
Every other month, got it.
So there'll be 6 times in a year.
Okay. That's your motion.
That's my motion.
Did we have a second? Seeing none, I'll second that.
Okay?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed?
No.
All right. Motion carries 2-1. Thank you for that. Let's go back. Duncan, I apologize. Let's go back to G6. Request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and Weber School District to hold the 2021 CTE Expo at the Golden Spike Event Center. Duncan, you're back.
Yes. So this is another one of those school district ones. We've been picking a lot of those up. I'm really happy and excited that it's been successful and that we've been able to facilitate some of those. There's been some cancellations and rescheduling, but this CTE is a newer one to us. We've had it in the past, but it gone away for a minute. Now it's coming back, so we're excited to host that. It's just the school district rates like the others have been.
Great spot for it. Commissioners? Commissioner Harvey, this is your portfolio.
Again, this is a good thing, and I'll make a motion that we approve the 2021 CTE Expo at the Golden Spike Event Center.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
We have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Duncan.
Thank you.
Let's now go to G8, request for approval of policy governing the distribution of CARES Act funds to nonprofits under the Weber County CARES Act program. And that would be Mr. Chris Crockett.
Thank you, Commissioners. So the Weber's CARES program has been around for some time now after we received federal funding through the CARES Act to distribute throughout the community. We are coming up on the end of that program, but there's still work to do until that deadline arrives, people that we could still assist. So this policy governs the distribution of CARES Act fund to nonprofits that specifically serve our homeless population, homeless service providers. And I wanted to read 2 statements from this policy that I think highlight why we are doing this. It says COVID-19 continues to threaten the health and safety of Weber County's residents, including our homeless population. Individuals experiencing homelessness are more likely to develop life-threatening complications from COVID-19 due to many having underlying medical conditions and the difficulty in accessing adequate health and community resources. The threat of COVID-19 to our homeless community is only compounded by the recent surge in cases and the onset of winter. Nonprofits that serve the homeless population fill a critical need in our community, and it is imperative that they remain open during the pandemic. Expenses for care for homeless populations provided to mitigate COVID-19 effects and enable compliance with COVID-19 public health precautions are necessary expenditures and a permitted use of CARES Act funds under 601D of the Social Security Act. This will allow us, after we pass this policy, to provide grants up to $500,000 per grant to these homeless service providers. Now, through the assistance of Ogden City, several applications have already been vetted. They have now been turned back to Weber County for us to verify that they are eligible to receive funding in accordance with the policy, and then we will be bringing recommendations to the Commission to consider next week so that we can actually get these CARES Act funds out to these homeless service providers. Are there any questions that the Commission has regarding this policy?
Questions, Commissioners? Or comments?
It's a great thing. I know, Mr. Chair, you've spent some time on this, and as have you, Commissioner Jenkins.
Yes, we've had recently the nonprofits. They're not only hurting for money, but the demand for their services has gone way, way up, and they're really struggling to stay alive and do well. And these are services that they deliver for pennies of what we could deliver them for. And so we want to protect our nonprofits as much as we can, and I highly agree with this, and I appreciate, Chris, you guys and the way you wrote that and allowing us to distribute these funds. So, are you ready for a motion?
I am.
With that, I'd make a motion that we approve G8, the CARES Act funding verbiage.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
And we have a second. Before I place the motion, I just also wanted to thank again John Bond, his team, Scott Park. Chris has been involved with that as we looked at these nonprofits and we set this policy a number of months back. I just appreciate their diligence in making sure that that these nonprofits, just like we did our small businesses, are vetted in a fair and equitable way. They weren't overpaid, they weren't underpaid, based upon the financial analysis that these gentlemen have done. It's a fair distribution. So I think we have not only the ability to defend our position with the feds or Treasury in the event we do get an audit, but more important than that, we have the ability to go to the public and say, we did our job as a county in distributing these in a fair and equitable. Everybody received, at least in my opinion, every institution, small business, received a fair amount based upon how they were impacted by COVID-19, by this pandemic, not necessarily because somebody in this administration or somebody in our staff or somebody from the public requested additional funding. We did it by the book, we did it by policy, and I appreciate your diligence. It would be a lot easier, it would have been a lot easier just to say, look, let's give them the amount requested. They didn't do that. They went through it in a logical, business-like manner, and I very much appreciate that, gentlemen. Thank you, and your team, John. Again, we couldn't say more. So we have a motion, we have a second?
Yeah, so just, and also, we have according to the people at the state, probably the finest program that's been developed of any of the 29 counties in the state of Utah, and that's it's not largely, it's all because of you guys have done a wonderful job. Any potential audit that could come our way, any of not only Weber County, but any of the recipients are protected. They don't have to worry. And that's what a source of peace through these hard times when they're trying to keep their businesses going, especially these nonprofits. And so Thank you again. Attest to what's been said.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to place a motion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Let's go to item G9, request for approval of the final reading of an ordinance of Weber County amending certain fees to the Peary's Egyptian Theater and the Ogden Eccles Conference Center. Mr. Ross Reeder, this would actually be ordinance 22. Go ahead, Mr. Reeder.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
We are, at the request, we combined the Peary's Egyptian Theater and Ogden Eccles Conference Center ordinances for the ease of posting. So basically, as it applies specifically to our license fees and rates to use both the facilities. Any questions?
Okay, any questions for Mr. Reeder? Questions, comments? If not, Commissioner Harvey, this is in your portfolio.
Most of the questions I had were in previous meetings, and because of that,
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the final reading of Ordinance 22, amending the fees for Peary's Egyptian Theater and the Ogden Eccles Conference Center.
Thank you for that. We have a motion.
I'll second it.
And we have a second. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Chair Farrar?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go now to G10, request for approval of a resolution adopting the Summit Road Overlay District property tax increase for calendar year 2021. Mr. Scott Park, welcome.
Thank you. If you're agreeable, Commissioners, I'd like to talk about the next two items together. It's the resolution to raise taxes on the Summit Road Overlay District and also to adopt the budget for the 2021 year. They kind of go hand in hand.
Go ahead.
Okay, so
You're going to cover both of these?
Yes, I'll cover both of them, and then we'll vote on them each
Got
individually.
it. You got it. Okay, go ahead.
So we presented the budget to the public Tuesday before Thanksgiving in a public hearing, and we went over the reasons for the need to increase the taxes for those who live on the top of Powder Mountain to pay for the snow removal. After that presentation, I received maybe a dozen phone calls, all of which just wanted clarification as to where the location was at, and after we explained what it was, they were all in favor of it, mostly because they didn't live in that area, but they see the need of having the residents who live up there pay for the services that they're receiving. So of all the feedback that we received, there was no negative feedback onto that proposal. And so that will help our municipal services by allowing those residents who live on the mountain to pay for their services and not rely on subsidies from the other areas of the unincorporated county to subsidize that snow removal up there. We also presented the regular operating budget, and since that time we made a couple of tweaks to the tentative budget for the final budget, and I just wanted to hit a few of those highlights. We added one employee to the Center of Excellence for $85,000. We added a $100,000 to our economic development for land-related transactions, so that's for the broker that's looking at potentially the sale of this building and related land purchases. We added one employee to the Culture, Parks, and Rec Department, and that's to help take care of some of their marketing demands. And then we added $140,000 for a Wildwood Bridge and $85,000 for a sewer study in the Upper Valley. So those were the big changes that we made. We also made a couple of tweaks just to update our payroll data, to shift some money from one bucket to another as we've refined our budget. And also we decreased our debt service by $1 million in cash, and that's because we've refinanced so many bonds. We're actually saving $1 million in cash. Now that's not the net present value because we did the refinancing this year, but that just shows you that $1 million of cash now would have gone out the door otherwise, but now the county keeps that because of how we've refinanced the debt. So those were the significant changes to the tentative budget to the final budget. And so unless you have any questions, I would ask that you approve both of those resolutions, one adopting the Summit Road Overlay District property tax, and another one adopting the operating and capital budgets for the 2021 calendar year.
Thank you, Mr. Park. So Commissioner Jenkins and I were talking about the Summit Overlay District yesterday. Remind me of those numbers. I believe that on a snow plowing basis, we were $1,000 per mile here in the Lower Valley.
Lower Valley's around $1,000.
$7,000 in Upper Valley.
Yes.
And how much for Summit?
A little over $50,000 per mile.
Per mile. All right.
So 1,000, 7,000, and 50,000.
Yes.
So there is a disparity.
There is a big disparity.
And now, just to be fair, that's an average over what period of time?
That's an average over 3 years.
3 years.
So sometimes it's a little more than that, sometimes it's a little less than that. But You know, this 125,000, we're anticipating the direct cost in an average year would be about 100,000, but we need a snow blower. We need some equipment up there. So we're putting aside a reserve to help us cover the cost of some equipment to go up there to help snow blow that, because that wind blows. So even when it's not snowing, it's still getting snow on the road because you've got the wind that blows it. So we're up there all the time, and it's going to wear out that equipment fast.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, let's have questions on G10 on the Summit Overlay District first. Questions or comments? If not, I'm ready for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion that we approve the Summit Overlay District and the taxes that go with it for 2021.
Thank you. And we have a second.
Second, with just a quick comment, if
Go
I
ahead.
may, Mr. Chair. I just want the public to understand the piece of equipment that plows the road at Summit for $50,000 a mile is not a traditional truck and plow like they're used to seeing around here. It's not like a county plow. It's not like a UDOT plow. It's the size of a locomotive nearly that has a 5-foot auger on the front of it that's about as wide, and they go down this road and they blow the snow off of it. And they turn it around, and they come back and they blow the snow right off the same road that they just went down, because the wind is always blowing up there. It's a tremendous lift. It's a tremendous work to be done up there, and for those people who have not had I would say the privilege of seeing how their county's developing at the top of the mountain, I would encourage them to do so. You may want to wait now till spring or summer, but the types of homes that are being built at the top of the mountain up there are really, truly incredible. It's a neat community, part of our county, that we're taking care of. And so I think this is a appropriate thing to do, and that's why I second it without hesitation.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Does that conclude your presentation on that particular item?
Yes.
Okay. And so we have a resolution. Roll call.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
And Chair Faure?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Any additional discussion on the operating budget G11?
Not unless you have additional questions.
Additional questions on G11 budget? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I'd make a motion that we approve our budget for next year, as noted today. But I want to also make a note in that budget that I protest the fact that we're paying out of the general fund for that Wildwood Bridge maintenance, or out of the municipal services. And I just wanted to comment on that because this seems a little petty, but there's a principle here. And that is the fact that this was agreed to by commissioners years ago, one who was a relation of mine. And there wasn't a municipal services account at the time.
There was or was not?
Was not.
Okay.
There was not a municipal services account at the time. And so they committed the entire county to that, I believe. And now that we have a municipal services account, they're saying, well, this is really an unincorporated, so unincorporated ought to pay for it. And the reason I protest that is because we took that from 200,000 plus that we have in the county, and now it's going to be paid by maybe 25,000 in unincorporated. So anyway, I make a motion, but I just want to make note in there, Fatima,
I got it.
that I'm protesting that part of it. Okay.
All right, we have a motion given with a protest, which is duly noted and appreciated. Do we have a second?
Oh, if he's made the motion to approve the operating and capital budgets for the calendar year 2021, I'll second that.
And agree with the protest?
Oh, no, I'm on the other side of the fence on that.
All right, so we did have a protest from Commissioner Jenkins on that.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Roll call.
Commissioner Jenkins?
I'm an aye, but I should mention, well, the commissioner's been really good to me about it. It's our attorneys that have pushed back against me, and I understand why. We've had this discussion in length, and so I do understand that. So anyway, I am an aye.
Okay. Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Chair Faure?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate that. Great work. All right, Commissioners, it's time for a public hearing. So I'd entertain a motion to adjourn our public meeting and reconvene as a public hearing.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
I'll second it.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We're now out of the public meeting in a public hearing. Public hearing is to discuss amendments to the operating and capital budgets of Weber County for the 2020 calendar year. Mr. Park, you're back up.
I'm back up. Thank you. So we've made a couple adjustments to the 2020 budgets. We just passed the 2021, but now we're going back in time to the 2020. And these are just budgets. The commissioners have reviewed all of these, and most of these are related to grants. Specifically, we have about $29 million worth of new grants that the county's received. Of that, $28.3 million are related to the CARES Act. So we're receiving the money in, and then we're asking for authorization to spend the money. So on most of these grants, there's no net change to fund balance. It's money that's coming in from somebody else, and then we're just passing it along. We also have $6.4 million we're adding to the budget, and that's related to the two bonds that we paid off early, the 2014 bond and the 2012 bond. And then we had various other adjustments that we made to the budget. Most of them were covered by revenues, but we had a couple that we're using our fund balance for. One specifically, some new positions at the transfer station. That's because we're not able to use the inmate labor as we used to because of the COVID situation, and so we've actually had to go out and hire new employees to fill that log. And then we've had a couple of miscellaneous repairs to 1800 South for the storm drain repair, and then a ramp grant to Ogden City, which we had approved back in 2018, but they didn't get the work done in time, so they just barely turned in their reimbursement request. So we already had the money set aside. We just need to put it into the budget so that we can spend it.
Okay. Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes.
Any comments from commissioners before we go on to the next item? Okay, thank you, Scott. Thank you. Let's now go to our next item for discussion of the public hearing, which would be to consider and take action on ZIA 2020-07, a request to amend the Weber County Land Use Code to add a height limit for weeds and turf grasses. Mr. Charlie Ewert, go ahead.
Commissioners, thank you. I've got a presentation, slideshow presentation for this, but it's a relatively short proposal. You could read it in the one paragraph that is there. We recently came to the understanding that we don't have, we have a regulation on unkempt yards, but we don't have a standard to which turf grasses and other kinds of weeds can be held in terms of height. And through a routine visit of different areas of the county, we recognize that there's probably the need to add a regulation to limit how tall some of the turf grass vegetation and weeds can be. And so you'll see that in your presentation. When we went to the Ogden Valley Planning Commission on this, there were some concerns expressed about how tightly it was worded originally. The concerns were related to, what about native vegetation? Are we going to consider those weeds? Are we going to consider them grass? What do we call those? And how do we continue to encourage people to xeriscape their yards or to leave it in native vegetation where it doesn't need to be irrigated? And so we worked with some of those concerns, massaged the language a little bit between the Planning Commission and yourselves, and you could see that in your proposal.
Okay, so this was approved by both planning commissions.
It was. The language has changed just a little bit. In fact, after both planning commissions, we moved the needle from no more than 6 inches tall to no more than 8 inches tall, just giving the landowner a little bit more flexibility in how tall their grasses can be.
Okay, and I believe that one of the reasons that we looked at this and took action was it seems like some of our new developments in different parts of the county, after they purchase a ground that may have been used as a farm and used as hay production, alfalfa, et cetera, they turn that into lots, which obviously then takes out the ability as they go through and sell those lots to farm it. And there was very little upkeep in some cases, not all cases, but it had an impact on the neighbors with a lot of times noxious weeds, including puncher vine and some others. So I think this, as I recall, this is a response to that outcry by some members of the public that basically what this does is, I think more than anything, require developers to take care of those vacant lots.
That's exactly right.
Does that be correct? Okay, commissioners, questions, comments? Anything regarding the height ordinance on weeds. Anything else? Okay.
Just making sure that a mower can cut to 8 inches.
Or
a deck mower.
Or a weed whacker, or
Sure, but a deck mower.
as low as 8 inches. Is that the question? You know, I didn't actually look into deck mowers and what their ability is in terms of height above the ground.
They can get that low.
Thank you.
I defer
think
to
so.
the expertise of Commissioner
I
Jenkins.
own one.
Probably get lower than that, actually, if they wanted to, but.
It depends on the, we had one at the fairgrounds. I just wanted to see what Charlie's thoughts were on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, does that
Tommy, unaware.
conclude your presentation on it,
It does.
Charlie?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, let's go to the next action item, which is a public hearing to consider and take action on ZTA 2019-06, a request to amend the Weber County Land Use Code to create standards for storage units in the commercial zones and other clerical edits. Charlie, you're back up.
So I do have a slideshow presentation for this, but rather than pulling that up, I just want to walk you through it, and if it gets a little clunky, I'll pull up the slideshow. The proposal that's in front of you, it's a little thicker than it would be if we were just addressing storage units. The context of what we are trying to address is storage units and providing standards for storage units in commercial areas. As we got into the chapters that storage units are in, the commercial chapters, we noticed that there are so many similarities between the commercial zones, the chapter that contains the commercial zones out west and the chapter that contains the commercial zones in the Ogden Valley. So much so that the differences between them could easily become a point of conflict or interpretation conflict in the future, considering that if it's listed a specific way in one zone, it's supposed to be interpreted as not being allowed in the other zone. And I don't think that's how the changes in the Ogden Valley commercial zones, when we addressed them in the past, I don't think that we anticipated that conflict would occur because it's not listed the same way in the C1, C2, and C3 zones. Ogden Valley zones have, commercial zones have changed over the last 20 years because of commercial pressures. And as new things came up, new amendments were made, and the same amendments were not proportionately made to the commercial zones out west where there just wasn't any commercial pressure. Now that we've got a little more commercial ground on 4700 and 12th Street, I would suggest we mimic what those changes were to the Ogden Valley zones for the Western Weber zones. And so we're basically just taking both zoning types, putting it into one chapter, but still having the difference in zones. So the Ogden Valley still gets the CV1 and the CV2, the Western Weber still gets the C1, the C2, and C3. We're just streamlining it into one consolidated chapter so we don't have the possibility for those conflicts. As we merged them together, we did have to take some interpretive measures on how to resolve some of the obvious conflicts. For example, in the Ogden Valley, dance studio and academy is specifically listed as a permitted use in one or two of the zones. In the Western Weber, C1, C2, and C3, it's silent about that. If you were to interpret the code as it's written, because it's listed as allowed in the Ogden Valley, we're supposed to deny it in Western Weber because it's not mentioned. So what we're suggesting we do is just we take each one of those things and we do kind of a one-for-one, a like-for-like permission on both sides. So if it's allowed in the CV1 in the Ogden Valley, it'd be allowed in the C1 Western Weber. If it's allowed in the CV2, it'd be allowed in the C2 in Western Weber, and just made those modifications. And working with our attorney's office, there were a couple of adjustments to the language that I wanted to address with you that I couldn't get into your packet in time. One of which is the definition of outdoor storage. So we are defining outdoor storage, and we are listing outdoor storage as not allowed in the commercial zones and only allowed in the M2 and the M3 zones. So not even in the M1 or MV1 zones. You can still have storage facilities, they would just need to be indoor. Okay. The definition of outdoor storage is listed as, in this proposal, it means items for sale, storage, or display outside a completely enclosed building for a period greater than 24 hours, which are for or associated with a commercial or manufacturing use. We're adding on just a few more additional words to also say, or are stored at a commercial or manufacturing facility, just to make sure we captured all that we needed to there. And then the other one, if you look in the use tables of the uses that are allowed in each of these zones, one of them says recreational vehicle storage, indoor only. We added in recreational vehicle or boat storage. So we just added those extra words in there. Everything else about this is either consolidating the two chapters or putting standards on how to build storage units so that they're more attractive in the CV2 zones.
Good. Does that conclude your presentation?
It does, unless you have questions for me.
Questions, commissioners? Questions, comments?
Hit this one pretty good, I think.
Charlie, I appreciate your work on this. I know this has been kind of a moving target, but it's great that we consolidate these. I like to be consistent between the upper and lower. That way doesn't lead to confusion. And I think that the standards that you put in place make a lot of sense.
Great. We've got more work in other zones to do consolidation, but we'll be doing that as more changes come down the road.
Great, thank you. No other questions or comments on this particular item? Let's go to public comments. Anyone in the chamber would like to come forward and speak to any of the three requests for the public hearings we have this morning? Seeing none, do we have any online, Christy? Any questions? All right, commissioners. Nobody else wants to
Mr.
chime
Chair,
in? We take action.
I'd make a motion we close the public hearing and move back to a regular meeting.
Second?
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Let's now go to action on the public hearing items. H2, request for approval of a resolution amending the operating and capital budget of Weber County for the 2020 calendar year. Roll call.
I'd make a motion first that we approve that. It'd be our resolution number 46.
Got it. And we have a motion.
I'll second that motion for Resolution 46.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on Resolution 46.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Chair Farer?
Aye, motion carries. H3, request for approval to amend the Weber County Land Use Code to add a height limit for weed and grass turf grasses. Do we have a motion on that?
I'd make a motion on that we approve ordinance number 23.
Second?
And we have a second. Roll call.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Chair Farer?
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. Let's go to H4, request for approval to amend the Weber County Land Use Code to create standards for storage units in the commercial zones and other clerical edits as presented by Mr. Ewert this morning.
I'd make a motion that we approve ordinance 24. In doing so, Charlie, I'd like to thank you too. I know this was driven by one specific request up there, but this is going to allow us to put something that's compatible with the river bypass and the river area down there, and low impact for those people. They didn't want a high impact business down by them, and I just think this is a win-win for everybody, and so I thank you for that. So that's my motion.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second?
And we have a second. This will be a roll call as well.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Chair Farer?
Aye, thank you. Motion carries. Thank you, Charlie. Mr. Grover, thanks for your work. All right, time to go to commissioner comments. Commissioners, Commissioner Harvey?
Comments, Mr. Chair. Thank you again for the opportunity to participate.
Thank you. You feeling okay?
Feeling great.
Good.
Except for, I want you to know that I've had a lasso around my tongue since a couple of those motions, but
Really? Okay.
meeting will be fine. We ended up where we needed to be.
Well, thank you for that lasso. Okay, Commissioner Jenkins.
All I'd like to say is that I appreciate working with Scott Park. It's fine. It's fun. It's good to finally get to the end of approving these budgets. And Scott's been really good to work with. And I push back, and I push back hard sometimes. And he always takes it with a chipper spirit, as well as our attorney's office. And I appreciate you guys doing that. I'm a little obstinate once in a while, and I know that. But you know, they've worked with me really good, and I appreciate them both this year. And we've worked our way through this, and we're in good shape. And the county is really benefited from you guys and your services, and I want to thank you for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we appreciate, even though that you don't agree with us, we need to hear, in those cases, the disagreement. You guys are the experts, and we need to listen to you. And thanks for doing what you do. I'm just going to make one comment, Commissioners, kind of outside the ballpark, but just this past week, some of us know that the NFR, National Finals Rodeo, was held in Arlington, Dallas-Fort Worth, which was significant in itself. I think it's the first time in 25 years that the NFR has been held outside Vegas. But the part that I wanted to bring up is that there's 9 world titles that are given at the end of that rodeo, and that 4 of the 9 world championship gold buckles were given to citizens in the state of Utah. Basically, the Wright brothers and then one other individual. And I'd probably be remiss if I didn't bring up there was a bull rider that was had some significant injuries that actually grew up in Bingham, that grew up in Weber County, moved to Box Elder County, and our thoughts and prayers are with him as he recovers. It was I actually watched that the night that he was injured, and it was a fairly serious injury. They hauled him out. He was unconscious. I understand he is recovering, but you know, if we take a look at the number of people that Utah sends versus, say, Texas, and to capture 4 of those 9 is amazing, Commissioners.
All 4 of those,
Our rodeo heritage.
all 4 of those 9 have competed inside the Golden Spike Arena out at Weber County. That's starting at the Utah Youth Rodeo and also the Spikers High School Rodeo. So they've got some great attachments to
Weber County.
Weber County.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, that ends my comments. I'd take a motion to adjourn.
Motion, so move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, we're adjourned. Thank you.